What do you say? What do you know? It's the Team NBS halftime show. That is a badass opening. I'm going to show it again. That is badass. All right. If this national championship game was a fight, it would be stopped. If it was a horse, they'd put it out to stud. But we're going to break it all down with Team NBS Crew, Joe Cardoza, Brock Vieira, Jeff Barnes. How you guys doing tonight?
Better than TCU.
My words are going to be exact same words, unfortunately, for this, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a different outfit, but I decided to wear all black because it seems like we're going out to a funeral after this game.
Brock, I've seen you more in the last 3 days than I've seen you in 6 months. He's been on my show. We've been going back and forth. I love it. All right, let's start with this, Joe. We'll start with you first. In sports, you got to learn how to win, right? We grew up and we saw Michael Jordan learn how to beat the Pistons. We saw the Pistons learn how to beat the Celtics. The Pistons learn how to beat the Lakers. In college football, it's no different, Joe. We saw Clemson lose to Alabama, come back and win. We've seen Georgia lose to Alabama, learn how to beat them. My biggest concern, there were several of them. I thought Georgia was going to win by at least 10 points. But, Joe, my biggest concern was the experience factor. Georgia knows how to win big games.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people can call it bias all they want to, but the SEC and the Big 12, two different brands of football. I mean, you have a Georgia team that pretty much every Saturday when they're playing in the SEC, they're going up against an elite defense, a pretty high-level offense on the other side. Can you say the same thing about TCU and the Big 12? I mean, you just take a look at this game. It's been just total domination. I mean, 354 total yards for Georgia so far, 3 turnovers for TCU. If they had any chance of pulling off the upset, you couldn't turn the ball over. Well, they've done that 3 times. I mean, this one's over. If you haven't checked your Netflix queue to see what you can watch today, use the halftime to figure out what you want to watch.
All right, Brock, I want to show you something because this, to me, doesn't look like a quarterback who is nervous at all. Okay, hold on one more time. Let's see. Go. Okay, he goes like this after he scores his second touchdown. Second time he scored a touchdown, he wasn't touched. Reminiscent, Joe, to Michael Jordan shooting those 6 3-pointers against Portland. Stetson Bennett's like this is too easy. Brock, what the hell's going on? All I heard all week was TCU speed. It's not SEC speed.
Yeah, well, TCU has speed. They just don't have the confidence to use it, it feels like. You see Stetson Bennett out there. The reason why he's going like how he's going is because he knows it's basically a wrap already. Like, let's not mince words here. TCU did not show up. TCU didn't ever seem like they were showing up. On the first play of the game, they had a false start to show you how nervous and unprepared they are for this game. I don't know what happened between last week and this week. This has been an absolute domination by Georgia. And it just shows what you've been saying. Experience is everything, and Georgia knows how to win.
Jeff, we talked about this at the start. Georgia came into this game. They interviewed Kirby Smart, and she said, what do you have to do? And he said, aggressive. Georgia took that field, and I know this, and you know this being a successful coach. When you know you're going to beat someone's ass, you walk in the house like, this is my house. They knew before they got on the field, they're going to blow this team out.
Absolutely. When they obviously looked at last week's tape, saw that they had a favorable matchup, and they've exploited it. And we talked about last week with Michigan. We thought maybe the struggles would be Michigan's power versus the speed and undersize of the TCU defense. Well, this week, Georgia's not only hit them with power, they showed they have speed to match. And it's hit them both ways. They've out-schemed them, as what we've seen both Stetson Bennett touchdowns. It's just straight scheme. Okay, they saw a flaw. They saw how aggressive they are. Well, zone read bites on that aggressiveness every time. You get him to ride down. Once that guy collapses, your quarterback takes off, and he's taken off twice for 2 touchdowns on him. So give credit to Georgia for going in there, looking at the film, saying we have matchups we can exploit, and they came out and exploited every one of them so far in this first half.
Joe, watch this for a second. What Joe was talking about here, Stetson Bennett didn't get touched on either one of those runs. And I've been saying this for a long time. He may disappear for a quarter, but this guy, when the lights are the brightest, he shows up. He's been the 3-time player of the game in college football playoffs. Joe, this guy gets no respect. Everyone was talking about the quarterback from TCU, but it's time to give Stetson Bennett the props he deserves.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one, Monty. I think he's Brock would know this better than me and Jeff as well, but I think he's playing himself into a second, third, maybe a 4th round draft pick. I mean, I think this is a guy who I thought NFL was in his future, but I just think with the basis of the last 2 seasons he's had, I can see him playing in the league, and he definitely needs to earn his respect. Especially somebody said on Twitter, if he wins back-to-back championships, do they build a statue out in front of the stadium in his honor? I think you do.
Jeff, talk about his progression, because he's the same age as Lamar Jackson. People don't realize that. He's the same age as Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson seems like he's been in the league for 10 years. Stetson Bennett seems like he's been in college for 10 years. But talk about, this is a story that you could write a Hollywood movie about, right? Getting 3rd, 4th, 5, 6 chances, everyone counting him out. He's undersized, Jeff, but this is a great story of intestinal fortitude and just will to win.
And not only that, it's a guy who's had the determination to stay with one program and throughout the life of it, knowing that eventually his chance would come. He had to sit behind the likes of Jake Fromm, Justin Fields. At one point, Jacob Eason was in the mix. Yeah. Here he goes. He comes in. He wins the starting job finally. Doesn't have a great, overwhelming first year, but you see he's turned it on the last 2 years. And, we talk about him as a prospect. We kind of touched up on it last week where his measurables just not going to measure up to the quarterback standards that we look for. And I think overall, what you're going to look at, how he plays, is he going to get a chance doing what he's been doing at the next level? It's going to be real interesting. This draft process plays out with him in it because he doesn't fit most of your benchmarks. So, but overall, the last 2 years of work, you look at what he's done, you have to say, well, the way they're playing at the next level, using a lot of spread concepts, so using a lot of spread discipline, a lot of shotgun, may actually play to his advantage going into a training camp.
Brock, I look at Georgia now, and I say they are a lot like Clemson was a few years ago with Dabo Swinney. They may not win it every year, but their second and third stringers are just as good as their first stringers. This program is about as good of a program going back to Alabama that we've seen in the last 10 to 20 years. They're going to win this game. So they're going to win back-to-back titles, which is extremely hard to do. Are they the new standard for college football?
They're not the new standard, but they're getting very, very close. I mean, the fact that they went back-to-back speaks volumes in itself. I don't believe Alabama's ever done that. Well, in the Nick Saban era, don't quote me on that. But until you reach the level of success over a decade, right, having those 5-6 titles, we can't really put them at the peak, but they're right underneath. To me, they're miles ahead of Clemson. We talk about the fact that they have great depth. They had 3 linebackers drafted last year. They had Nakobe Dean, they had Quay Walker, and then they had their backup, Channing Tinsdale, I believe his name, get drafted to Miami in the 3rd round as well. That it's just complete. They have a machine out there in Georgia. They're doing everything correct. And the most important thing when you look at the Bulldogs going forward is how are they going to evolve in this new era of NIL and transfer portal. If you look at the guys they're bringing in now, they're evolving very, very well, and I expect Georgia to be a powerhouse for a very, very long time, much more successful than Clemson has been.
Yeah, Alabama won it in 2011 and 2012, so back-to-back those years. But again, Nick Saban won 6, 1 with LSU, 5 with Alabama. Jeff and Joe, we'll start with you again. How do you there's not an SEC bias, Joe. They're the best damn conference we've ever seen. And here's how I know. Every year, the top 1st and 2 rounds in the draft are filled with SEC players. So can we stop this BS? There's an SEC bias. We're watching it on the field right now. Nothing matches their speed, their athleticism, They're a minor league football program, that conference.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like Brock just mentioned, you got people that are backups getting drafted in the NFL draft. There's not a lot of conferences that have people that are second and even sometimes third string that are getting drafted in the NFL. I mean, it's just top quality players are all going and flocking to the SEC. I mean, something I talked about on Jeff and I's show last week. When I think about Pac-12 teams that are not in the South, I think of shorts and T-shirt practice. When I think of SEC, buckle up your chin strap. We're hitting all the time. We're probably pushing the boundaries when it comes to padded practices, but it's old school football, and it shows on the field on Saturdays, and it shows by the number of people you see that went to the SEC that are playing on Sundays.
Jeff, as someone who's around football players all the time, combines, scouting, I say this all the time about Duke. I used to be friends with Chris Collins, who was an assistant at Duke. He was at Seton Hall. Then he went to Duke. Then he went to Northwestern. He said most colleges, coaches, and I'm talking about the elite programs in college basketball, the Kentuckys, UCLA back in the day, they had a list of 50 to 100 players. Duke has a list of 10 players. How much easier is it to recruit when you're constantly winning and sending guys to the pros? We always see Calipari when his teams are good at the draft. That's the best recruiting tool. A few years ago, Dabo Swinney smoking a cigar because 4 of his players got drafted in the top 20. How much of an edge is it to walk into a kid's living room with his parents? Who knows if they do that anymore? They might Zoom. You know, they probably don't do home visits. But, Jeff, how much of an advantage is it to say, hey, we're sending pros every year?
It's a big advantage because most high school athletes that believe that they are pro athletes are going to want to go to a program where they have the chance to get drafted. So if you're a coach that's consistently put people in the pros, when you're coming into that kid's living room, most head coaches don't do that anymore. They wait for them to come on campus now. But, it's usually the assistants that are on the road. But, it's one of those things where it's that extra feather in the cap. We talk about the program. We talk about the facilities. Oh, by the way, we have pro placement where our players actually get drafted. So that is, if the kid believes that's where he wants to be and he's going to look for the best situation for him. It's starting now in high school where kids are transferring to high schools because they want to get the best scholarship offer. Well, kids are picking colleges not just because they want to play, not just because they want to be seen, and also because of the uniforms, as you see with Oregon, but you also want the ability to be seen by the pros. So you want a program that's constantly placing people in the NFL. So it's a very big help to your program.
Okay, Brock, how does Georgia avoid what we just seen with Clemson over the last few years? When the Lakers won the championship, I said when Jason Kidd went to Dallas, that's a huge chink of their armor. Anytime a team wins a title, guys want to transfer, guys want to make money, coaches want to get paid. So how does Georgia avoid this? Alabama has never, even though they lost 2 games this year, let's calm down. Alabama loses coordinators every year. How does Georgia avoid becoming a Clemson where the coordinators are gone, players are transferring every year because they're not getting seen, they're not getting looked, because they're not going to wait like a Stetson Bennett did for years? How does Georgia avoid this?
Honestly, it's by doing what they're doing right now. The reason why Clemson fell off so hard as they did is not because of the coordinators, because yes, they did lose their offensive and defensive coordinator this offseason, but they had them for 7 years, and they did win 2 national titles. They also lost a lot in those primetime games. It's not being overly reliant on a superstar quarterback. That's what the problem with Clemson is. When we saw them struggle early after Deshaun Watson, that's when Kelly Bryant was in. Then they put in Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence took them to the moon. Then when Trevor Lawrence had COVID against Notre Dame and had to bring in DJ Uiagalelei, they lost. Then when Trevor went off and they were reliant on Uiagalelei and you can't do the same things Lawrence did, that's when they start to fall off. Georgia has never had to rely on an all-star quarterback, and until about maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, Alabama never really relied on an all-star quarterback. John Parker Wilson, Greg McElroy, AJ McCarron.
Greg McElroy.
Right? Jay Coker. Those names aren't first-round NFL quarterback names. Yeah. In fact, the only guy to have an NFL career is AJ McCarron, right? But they built teams that could sustain success. Strong defensive teams that can run the football. That's exactly what Georgia is doing. That. Don't give up your bread and butter for a superstar quarterback. If you continue doing what they're doing right now, they're going to have success for a very long time.
You got the Georgia quarterback, Matthew Stafford, too.
Stafford, yes.
But Matthew
Never won the
Stafford
big game, though.
never won a big game. He did beat
No, he
my
didn't.
Hawaii Warriors in the Sugar Bowl, 41-10. But this blowout is making me feel a lot better about that.
Joe, when you look at college football now, and you just brought up the excuse me, the Pac-12, which had 5 teams win 10 games. Because of the money now that's going to be infused in USC, because of the money that's always in Oregon now, and players can get paid for their name, likeness, and image, are we going to see, maybe the second or third stringer from a Georgia, from an Alabama say, hey, I could be a starter at Oregon. I could be a starter at Washington State. Are we going to see people transfer for what Jeff brought up before, not only to be seen, but to get paid as well?
I think you will. I mean, will it be a huge movement? No, but I think you see people make the moves. I mean, at the end of the day, the player's going to do what they think is best for themselves and their family. But I also think it still holds weight, the names of the school. When you go to Alabama, a ton of pro scouts are going to come watch your games, or Georgia. So, yeah, you might be a backup, but you're going to have a lot more eyes on you. Whereas if, let's say, you transfer to – I don't know, I'll keep on picking on the Pac-12. You transfer to Cal, and you're a starting quarterback. How many eyes are really watching you play games at Cal? So people will make those decisions, but I think people will still know the blue blood schools are the way to go.
Jeff, I want to talk about a couple other programs here. This game's a blowout. Obviously, Georgia winning 38-7. Do you think Harbaugh leaves Michigan? There's rumors now that they're under investigation for some illegal activities. This is Joe's school. If I'm Harbaugh, I get out of Dodge.
If he gets the right offer, he's out. Don't forget that Michigan can also sweeten the pot and counter offer with a nice monetary increase. Usually keeps a lot of people around, especially with lower expectations. If he goes back to the NFL, they want Super Bowls. And he realizes that. He fell short. His brothers won 2 of them. He's tired, as he said, I'm tired of seeing my brother walk around with 2 rings and I have none. So you better believe that's what he wants. But if it's not an ideal situation where he believes he can win and he can continue doing what he's doing in Michigan, if Michigan shows him the money, he'll stay his butt right where he is.
Brock, TCU's a nice program, but again, they've never been to the level that is level of play that they are seeing tonight from Georgia. Is this a one-off for TCU, or can they sustain now with the playoffs expanding? Do you expect them to be a legitimate top 15, top 12 team to make the playoffs, 8 teams? Is this not a one-and-done deal for TCU?
I don't think it's a one-and-done deal for TCU because of the conference that they're in, which is the Big 12, which is losing Oklahoma and Texas. And the teams that they're bringing in, they're good, but they're not elite level talents. So you already have this sustained run of success. You're from Texas, so you're already getting in a lot of money for NIL anyway, and the competition isn't that severe. So I expect TCU to kind of go downwards in the next 1-2 years, but then rebound after that when they kind of bottom out a little bit. The big thing is, can they hold on to Garrett Riley for next year? I doubt that, but if they can, I expect TCU back in the championship discussion. If not, I think it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we see them again, but we will see them again.
Joe, I talked about this with Jeff 2 weeks ago on the Full Monty Sports Show. I said one of the reasons why I loved Luke Fickell was that he won. I lived in Ohio for a year. Every kid grows up in Ohio, which is a top 5 state for high school recruits, wants to go to Ohio State. Luke Fickell got kids who lived in Ohio to play there. How hard is for TCU to recruit with the likes of Texas A&M, with the likes of the Texas Longhorns? I mean, that's not easy, Joe.
No, not at all. But I think an appearance, even if you're getting your butts kicked, an appearance in a national championship game goes a long way. And then, of course, like we talked about, too, what are they doing in terms of NIL? Texas has a lot of money, a lot of alumni. Think about LaDainian Thomas and people like that. And the tradition Gary Patterson, TCU has as far as being a pretty solid football program. I think that it should be just fine. I mean, how many years have we been saying the Texas Longhorns are back, yet they've never been back at all? So I think in terms of Texas and where they are in the hierarchy and football, TCU, I think it should be just fine.
Jeff, talk about Sonny Dykes replacing a legend in Gary Patterson. A lot of people did not like this. They did not like the way Gary Patterson went out, who, in this prime was winning 10 games a year with his defensive-minded coach, his special teams. Talk about what Sonny Dykes has done and what he's meant, replacing, let's be honest, somewhat of a legend at TCU.
Yeah. Well, he's done a good job, one, winning over the locker room, keeping kids from leaving the program. You get a coaching change, a lot of kids want to jump ship. He did a good job of retaining a lot of the players, retained a lot of the staff, kept the cohesiveness that he had in that locker room, and got these guys to really buy into what he wants to do. And he took quick turnaround. Here he is in the national championship game. Unfortunately, the result isn't what it turns out, what he wanted it to be. But right now, you can't be unhappy with the product so far. I think overall it sets him up for long-term success.
So, Brock, you mentioned earlier you think TCU will take a step back after this year. Moving forward with the extended college playoffs here, can we look at a time where we may see, Jeff, if there's 12 teams, we may see 6 SEC teams? Brock, is that possible?
No, I don't think so, because all those SEC teams got to play each other. But I think 4 is very possible, because you got the division split, right? You got one side and the other. So I expect annually we'll have 2 teams from the West, 2 teams from the East, right? Because you can probably already write in Alabama and Georgia, 4 from each side. Tennessee is probably going to be a top contender for a long time. Ole Miss always has a surprise year. Auburn has a surprise year, right? So I would say 4 is where I tap it off. 6 is a little bit extreme, because you can't really put in an 8-4 SEC team over like a 10-2 Pac-12 team.
That's a good point.
That's just pushing the envelope a little bit too much.
Jeff, before we go, got another couple minutes here talking with Team NBS Crew here. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Team NBS YouTube channel. Check out all our shows there. Jeff, I'm not a believer of Lincoln Riley. He's the quarterback whisperer, but as we see with Tulane, as we see against better teams, he had the same problem in Oklahoma. He can't stop anyone. He is a horrible defensive coach. He's a lot like Cliff Kingsbury offensively, but defensively, he's a disaster. Cliff Kingsbury just got fired. I don't know how he got hired in the NFL. He was 19-35 in the Big 12. But Jeff, how does Lincoln Riley maintain the pressures on him now? The first year was gravy, but he hasn't evolved, Jeff. What makes you think that he's going to be a defensive coach and not give up 45 to Alabama in a college playoff game?
His issue is similar to Josh Heupel. We talk about guys that are heavy offense, right? Well, when you're a heavy offensive team, 10-1, you tend to leave your defense out there a whole lot. Again, he did just that. They weren't exactly very consistent in the second half versus Tulane, which is how Tulane was able to take the lead back from him. But overall, when you're a heavy offensive team, you tend to put your defense out there a lot, expose them to a lot of things that you don't want to expose them to. If you're a team that's a little more balanced, where you run the ball and kind of control it a little bit, they kind of keep your defense off the field so your weaknesses aren't shown. Because every college, for the most part, with the exception of Georgia, has weaknesses on defense.
Right.
Okay, there's somewhere that there's holes in that defense that you're trying to hide. So he's not, just like Josh Heupel, they're not very good at hiding their defensive deficiencies, and it tends to put them out there for a lot of points to be given up.
All right, we got about a minute left since we're speaking of college sports. Joe, Patrick Ewing time in Georgetown has got to come to an end. Tell the casual fan who hasn't watched Georgetown play the last time they won a Big East game.
Oh, man, it's been a long time. There's a guy who I follow on Twitter who always makes it a point to say how many days it's been. I want to say it's been at least 400 days. Yeah.
Over a year.
I didn't check his Twitter. I'm talking about a conference game. I didn't check his Twitter feed today, but I'm pretty sure we're in that 400 mark.
So what has been the problem, Joe? Player development, getting quality talent. I said this to you in the chat room. I thought Patrick Ewing would get big-time names at Georgetown.
I think the biggest thing has just been a consistent roster. Been a lot of upheaval, a lot of transfers, guys coming in, not living up to expectations or being able to live up to his standards, and they've left the program. And then now with this season, I mean, wow, got brand new head coaches. I want to say we have 3 new coaches on the staff, 9 new players trying to get acclimated. And yes, they've played a lot of games so far this season. I want to say probably almost 15, but still 9 new players is 9 new players. Yeah. Conference play has started, winless in conference play so far. Is this going to be a situation where they get better come tournament time? I don't know. The one thing he has going for him, obviously, is the support of the AD and also the support of the chairman and the people that run Georgetown. So we'll have to see. It's just been a wild time. It's definitely a wild time for the Hoyas.
Yeah,
All right.
and we talked about this the other day, Joe. They're not very disciplined offensively and defensively, and it
Yeah.
shows in the second half of games.
Yep.
Teams come back with adjustments, and they just can't answer.
A lot of lost leads.
Yeah, in the half court, they can't execute on offense, and defensively in the second half, they just don't adjust to what teams are doing.
All right, guys, this has been great. Brock, how can we follow you? How can we support you?
Yeah, follow me right there at MNS Today. That's my Twitter handle. Follow me. I follow back. Support me by supporting Team NBS. I'm a rater for them, so I have a bunch of articles on there already. Some more coming out soon. Doing my end-of-year college football awards as well, listing my first, second, third, and freshman All-American teams, alongside the fact that I also do various shows for NBS as well. Check us out on YouTube.
Yeah, and make sure when you start writing next year's articles, we include Bo Nix in the Heisman conversation.
Oh,
I'm not.
Oh, here we go.
Thanks, Brock. Great job. All right, Jeff, what do you got coming up next?
We'll be right back here tomorrow night, me and Joe, for the perspective with Philip Daniels. So make sure you tune in for that. Also, Bucs Weekly. The Bucs clinched the NFC South, took this weekend off, as you saw. They host the Dallas Cowboys Monday night. I'll have a little insight on that playoff game for you this week as well. And also, we'll be coming back right before the Senior Bowl with Draft Central.
Jeff, is this a little bittersweet for you because you cover the Bucs, you cover them for Team NBS, but you're a Dallas Cowboy fan?
I hate that you advertise that because everybody goes, oh, you're a Cowboy fan. You're not objective. I'm very objective. Even if I have to pick against them, I'm going to, trust me, it comes with the job. You don't always get to work for the team you love, right? So I don't get to cover the team I love. Welcome to sports. You know,
right,
if I'd have gotten drafted by the Packers, I'd have loved every minute of it. I'd have frozen my butt off, but I'd have loved every minute of it.
Joe, real quick, and we'll leave Jeff on here. There's something wrong with Dak Prescott. I said this on my show earlier today. I'm tired of seeing Dak Prescott 2 times a year not show up for a game. I said this earlier on my show. When I used to coach players and they were studs, they were the best players on the team. I said, when you're bad, your bad needs to be 20 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. When you're good, it's 28, 10, and 5. Dak Prescott can't go games where he looks like the worst player on the field, Joe. I see this 2-3 times a year with this guy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that he might be he might have the most pressure on him heading into the playoffs out of any player. I really do. I mean, if you say Tom Brady, look at his legacy. Tom Brady has definitely improved, but I think with Dak Prescott, people always take it back to the contract. And of course, it's Dallas, it's America's team. I think he has to be one of the most amount of pressure out of any player. And you're right. He'll have games where you're like, man, this guy is spectacular. And then he has other games where you're just like, I can't believe this guy's getting paid. He's getting paid. Or take it even a step further. I can't believe the Cowboys thought this guy would lead them to the promised land. So, I mean, he's going to put up or shut up. Been very inconsistent in the playoffs.
My friend Andrea's son is a diehard Lions fan, and he was heartbroken that Seattle kicked the field goal, but he was so happy that they beat the Packers. How satisfying is it, even though it's a meaningless game, for Washington to lay the smackdown on the Cowboys?
Oh, that's all that matters. Our team's been so bad. That's the biggest game of the season. Those are the 2 biggest games of the year for Washington fans. I mean, I had people that were crushing the Commanders all season long that didn't even mention anything bad yesterday. And it's like, oh, we beat Dallas. It's great. We're going to go into the offseason. All kinds of optimism all of a sudden.
Let me tell you how I never used to be like this, but I've gotten petty in my old age. There was a guy for the last 5 weeks when Miami was losing, how you picked them to go to the playoffs. They're trash. I found him on my timeline. Now I get a million hits on my page a month. It took me 30 minutes to find him on my timeline. And I said, hey, I thought the Dolphins were garbage. They made the playoffs. That's how petty I am. But Jeff, do you think that Tampa Bay can beat Dallas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, first thing is, when they played the first time, Dallas was whole, and they still beat them, right?
Right.
Look at Dallas now. They're scoring more than Tampa Bay is. As somebody that covers the Bucs, I'm like, well, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, don't expect this team to beat Dallas scoring 16 points a game. Well, looking at Dallas now, looking at their defense, knowing that you're down 2 corners, and everybody you've thrown at the corner opposite Diggs has been getting toasted, Tom Brady has to be feeling real good about facing the Dallas defense again this time around. So, and plus their offense, the way they showed out yesterday against Washington. So right now the Bucs have to be feeling good defensively, saying they're not playing well. We can get turnovers. And as far as offensively, they can go, well, we know we don't have to throw at Diggs this time around because everybody they're throwing on the other side of him has been picked on week after week.
Yep.
I think I was 173 and 74. I pick the games every week on my show. And when I'm never not sure, when it's 50-50, I say, who has the better quarterback? Who has the better coach? So is Tom Brady right now a better quarterback than Dak Prescott? And when it comes to coaching, I can't stand McCarthy and I can't stand Bowles. I got to be like a beautiful mind and write on a chalkboard to figure out who wins this game because I don't know where the advantage is.
Well, right now, Brady is still the better quarterback. But I'll tell you what, the guy you have to worry about isn't Mike McCarthy if you're Dallas. The guy you have to worry about is Kellen Moore. Because if you watched the game yesterday, Dak Prescott was bad. Kellen Moore was worse because he didn't do anything to help the guy get out of this funk that he's in. And I'm watching the game going, why are you calling that when your quarterback is struggling? You don't run any of the easy stuff that you run on first down, the bootlegs, the other play action stuff that you can give them 1 and 2 quick options. He didn't even run the simple now screens that they run. There was so much that he normally does that he didn't do this week and left Dak Prescott out there to do it all on his own when he was struggling. That was a mistake by Kellen Moore, even worse than Dak Prescott.
One thing about
Kellen
Todd
Moore is showing you he's good enough. Yeah.
One thing about Todd Bowles for one game, we've seen him shut elite quarterbacks down.
Yep.
All right, Joe, close with this.
Yeah.
What's going on with Team NBS?
Oh, man, a lot. Like Jeff said, him and I will be back live with 15-year NFL veteran Philip Daniels tomorrow for The Perspective, our NFL show. So we have that going on. Nuts and Bolts Association, which is our NBS Association, is our NBA show. We're back. First episode in a long time was today, so we'll have that weekly. And the articles, like Monty says all the time, it's hard to keep up, man. We go from 1 to 30 in an hour span. So a really, really good group of talented writers. And now with the rebrand of us being a complete total media company, you might read an article about Greg's anatomy. You might read an article about politics. You might read an article about why the Vikings should be a favorite for the Super Bowl. You just never know. We got a little bit of everything for everyone.
And I will say this for all watching now, at 10 o'clock, if you're a basketball fan, do what I'm doing. Sacramento Kings, Orlando Magic. That's going to be fun. That's what I'll be watching since this game's an absolute blowout. All right, guys, great job. We'll see you down the road.
Thanks, Monty. Appreciate it.
Great job, Jeff. Great job. All right, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the Nuts and Bolts Team NBS YouTube channel. Team NBS YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the second half. Georgia is rolling.